All right, I think we are live, everyone. Hello and welcome to the WomenTech Conference panel today with our split panelists. My name is Tu Nguyen, and I'm the Practice Director of Data and Experimentation here at Split. At Split, we power engineering teams to build impactful products. Software development is central to every business, and we ensure it delivers the value you expect. Split is an industry-leading feature delivery platform which enables companies to embrace impact-driven development across their engineering and product teams. We pair the speed and reliability of feature flags with data to measure the impact of every feature. And so by reducing development time, mitigating risk, and quantifying impact of every feature, we free engineering and product teams to solve customer and business problems. I'm extremely excited to kick off today what is going to be the start of an informative and inspiring conference for all. Despite making up more than half of the workforce, less than 1/3 of technology roles and 1/4 of leadership roles are filled by women. Conferences like WomenTech help ensure that these critical voices are heard, and all of our panelists today will be leading sessions each day of the conference, so be sure to join us in June. Today, I have the honor of bringing together women leaders at Split to share their experiences about working in the technology space and about how we're building a culture of inclusion at Split. So I want to take a few moments as people are joining us in the conference for all of us to share some role models and superheroes that they love. Joy, Trish, or Shannon, feel free to drop your favorite superheroes, role models, any mentors that you look up to. And everyone who is here in the audience, feel free to drop in the chat if you have any favorites. I'll start first. I want to say that my role model is my sister. She is a mom of 2 young girls, which we know is a whole handful, but she manages her family household, helps her support her husband, her friends, and she is a true wonderful family member and friend who puts everyone else first and really holds everybody together, keeps everyone connected, and offers such great support to everybody. She is a social worker, and so not only does she help those who really need assistance and really need to have a voice heard, but she is also my best friend and really supports me in everything that I do.
I was just going to drop this in the chat, but like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, even before everything this week, has just always come up as somebody that I thought was a really cool woman pioneering in a new, in a new space for most women, and has just made so many landmark advances. And I always have thought that she's so cool and so separate from anything I've ever done with my career. And I just think that's really cool and unique. She's always been on my who would you go to dinner with, dead or alive question. So
I think that's a really great answer and very relevant for the times that we are living in right now.
Perfect. For me, my role model has been my grandmother. She basically was only educated until her 2nd or 3rd grade, and then married at I think 12 or 13, and had 9 kids, out of which 7 of them were women. And at that point in India, when she was young, she encouraged her daughters to pursue education, to pursue their career choices. And every one of my aunts ended up having a lifetime career. So I think that's something, her strong presence of mind and what she did, and that basically has influenced me through my life.
I love that answer. Thank you, Trish, for sharing that. All right.
I feel like we're, sorry. I feel like we're all going with family. I would probably pick my mom just because, similar to some of the other responses, she always pushed me to do whatever I wanted. There was never any limits. It didn't matter that I was a girl. And the other aspect is she was the one who really first introduced me to DEI and the importance of it and how to think about it and all of the different aspects. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for sharing your favorite superheroes, your mentors, and your role models. So I'd love to introduce our panelists today. Again, my name's Tu Nguyen, Practice Director of Data and Experimentation at Split Software, And my role at the company is to help our customers build a culture of experimentation and measurement so that they can make better informed decisions to help drive business value. I'd like to introduce Joy Eberts, Trishula Pavagada, and Shannon Cassidy as part of today's panel. And I'll let the ladies introduce themselves and let them share more about what their roles are at Split.
Yeah, so I'm Joy. I am a backend engineer. I'm a principal software engineer. So specifically, it's kind of a vague title and job description, but I look at our entire backend infrastructure and try to make sure that we're all aligned and pointed the same direction, try to make sure teams are thinking about our problems in similar ways and that we're all kind of generally working together well.
Hi, I'm the Director of Engineering at Split. So I manage the engineering teams that are building the feature flagging platform and the integrations at Split. I'm passionate about building teams and promoting innovation and bringing in a diversity of opinions into the organization.
And I'm a product manager at Split. I lead the team that works on integrations geared towards our developer persona. So when Split's integrating with Jira products, even just Slack or Azure DevOps, I'm the person building those. I'm newer to Split. My background originally was in construction. So anything career pivot wise, I have made a hard pivot myself, but have been in product and tech for the last 5 years.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. So let's get into this. Let's talk about your career background and your experience working in technology. So Shannon, like you said, you've had this very interesting career background and shift, this pivot from construction management and moving into product management. Can you share with our audience some advice if they're considering that industry shift, and maybe share some of those thoughts about what skills are transferable across all different industries?
Yeah. So my background, I graduated with a degree in civil engineering, and I went into construction and civil engineering after college. And I think probably similar to many people that find after the first number of years of their career, it could be 2, it can be 10, it could be 20. You might find, hey, I think my values have changed, or the way that I want to work has changed. And for me, that happened a few years after I started in that industry and I wanted to switch. And I found it really hard and intimidating to go into tech, because tech is a very different world than construction, not just in the way that you work, but the skill sets that I thought you needed to have. But what I found was when I started talking to a bunch of people and started networking within tech and asked other people about their story, I found that a lot of people that work in tech come from all of these different backgrounds. And through that, I was able to understand, all right, is it the ability to talk to people? Is the ability to rally people around my ideas? Is it my project management experience? I think anybody looking to make a transition can find the same things for themselves of, hey, what are their superpowers in their current role? And if you abstract that, what might that help you in tech? And you can talk to these other people and look for feedback on what you're doing. I'll make a quick plug for my session on June 9th. I'll be talking about how I did a full pivot in my career from a construction project manager into product management, and have lots of tips and tricks, things that I had learned myself and have always really wanted to give back those answers. So I'll make a quick plug, but generally, if you abstract the skills that you have that you're really good at now, I think you'll be able to start to transition into something that you want to do too.
Thanks, Shannon. Really appreciate that. Joy, I know your background has been in engineering, but you've also made a couple of career shifts as well in the roles that you've played. Maybe you can share, again, some of those transferable skills between the roles and share a little bit more about how you got started in technology.
Yeah, so I guess I majored in computer science in college. So I actually started math and then really liked the CS side. So I majored in computer science. And I went into software engineering after that. A little ways into my career, I was strongly encouraged to go into management. I had a few mentors who thought I would be good at it and really pushed me in that direction. I spent about 2 years managing, and at the end of it decided I absolutely hated management. So at that point, I talked to my manager and I switched back to an IT career path. Since then, I guess I've progressed up that ladder and looked back. You asked also about transferable skills. I think that is still a lot that I got out of being a manager. I don't actually regret having learned a lot about how to communicate, what motivates people, how like the engineering organization as a whole works, and how to leverage all of that has been very useful.
I think that's really great. And I think it's very powerful and great that you were self-aware that you knew after trying out that management wasn't where you wanted to be, but that you can still use those skills that you learn in management across the roles that you play today at Split and in your community. Those aspects of being able to work with people, with collaborating, understanding how others work, what their work styles are, and how they're motivated is really helpful in being a great team player. And I've been fortunate to see this in practice at Split. So Trish, I'd love to hear your career background and how you got to your role as a director of engineering, and maybe different skills that you feel that you've been able to transfer across your growth.
For me, I started with computer science, or rather got introduced to computer science when I was in high school. And I grew up in India, and computers were just beginning to happen in India when I was in high school. I think what fascinated me about computers was the fact that, you could do something on a machine and then get it to work for you. And that was just fascinating for me. Of course, I have to admit that I loved sneaking and playing games, and that was more attractive. And as I got to the stage of making a decision of, picking my college major, computer science was becoming a big deal in India, and there were a lot of career opportunities opening up there. So I chose computer science engineering, and obviously the career path was to become an engineer after that. I worked for a couple of years in India before I moved to the US. And part of my migration also meant that I had to work through the immigration process in order to get the work permits and such. So I did have a career break for a couple of years when I moved to India, and then had to basically build my way up through the career here. I used to be a backend engineer for a really long time before one of my mentors and leaders pushed me into management. He recognized that, I had the skills and the emotional intelligence to do people leadership. Ever since that, I've actually loved the people leadership role that I have played. And I think my technology and engineering background gives me the ability to be able to understand when my engineers come to me and talk to me, to be able to understand, why they have a certain suggestion or a position and what it means to do stuff. And also for me to be able to give them the feedback. And I still miss engineering. I love what I do right now. And every once in a while, I try to see if I can, sneak in a line of code into our code base.
Okay, well, we'll look for that and see where that shows up in Split. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And just, for me, my background, I actually went to school for a degree in political science. I didn't have any tech background at all, but I did take one tiny computer science class. I think it might have been a half semester even, while I was in college. It would be very dangerous for me to insert any lines of code anywhere. But I actually was brought into technology through another alum from my school. I went to Smith College, which is a women's college in Massachusetts. And the way I kind of got into technology was that someone else believed in me, that they saw that I had potential to learn this, to understand this, and recognize that it's not necessarily all about being able to code, being able to program, being able to do extremely difficult math, but there's a lot of aspects of technology that require creative mind and innovative thinker, project management skills, ability to communicate. And as technology grows, there's these new roles that are being defined. Data analytics wasn't a thing 10, 15 years ago. The role that I do now with data and experimentation is extremely new in the grand scheme of things when we think about how long the internet's been around. So, I really encourage everyone to think about what really interests you, and to even look in the future of what's a role that hasn't been built yet that could be built for the skills that you have and the passions that you have now. So I'd really love to hear from our panelists about, you've had such wonderful careers, very different backgrounds, and what are some of those factors that have helped you to be where you're at right now in terms of where, your career success, and maybe you want to share some significant barriers that you've had to overcome to be where you are now.
I can take this one first. I was like, all right, who's gonna jump in and try to get visual cues
I
here?
know the virtual part is a little hard, right?
I know, but it's fun too. It just really gives everybody this like level playing field in a way.
Like being at a four-way stop at a road, right?
Right. I know. And you find yourself wanting to go and then say, no, you. But I mean, my major career pivot was one of the places that I met the biggest barriers to entry, but I'll be talking about that in a separate section. So what I want to actually focus on is when I was going from when I first went into tech, I was transitioning from customer success into product, and I did it at a really small startup. And once I was doing product at that company, I wasn't feeling really confident, and I didn't actually know everything that I was doing. When I was working for this startup, I was working with one product manager and didn't really get a very well-rounded like swath of experience. There's so many different ways to do product, and I imagine this similar with a bunch of different roles. You can really lean into your strengths in different areas. And I think at the time, what I didn't realize is how important mentorship is in understanding the wide range of the ways that you can do things. There's not one way to build a career or to get to the next step. And so I think one of the biggest barriers was being young in my career and just realizing that I can go elsewhere, and it's my boss, the way that they work isn't the only way that you can work or do product. There's so many different ways to do it and be really good at it. And so I think the biggest barrier was almost with myself of learning, hey, what else is out there? And actually going and motivating myself to go do the extra work to go outside of my company. And for me, I think I ultimately found, all right, switching to a much larger company, I'll have a little bit easier access. So I think me just having that mental barrier of, oh, my boss is so good at what they do, but I don't work the same way. That was a really big barrier that I think I had to overcome by starting to just put myself out there and talk to other people. That was a big, big learning too, that I always want people to think about when they're going out and seeing people do things a certain way. So.
Yeah, I love that you really took that onto your own and kind of brought your true authentic self into this new role and this responsibility, and really knowing that look, the way things are done doesn't have to be the way that we do things forever. And that's what technology is. It's about innovation. It's about change. It's about adapting to the environment that we're in and finding always the newest, the most efficient ways to do things and ways that we can optimize. So thank you, Shannon, for sharing that. Trish or Joy, would you like to add anything to the continued conversation about different factors into career success, or talk about any barriers that you've had to overcome in your careers?
One thing I would say is that your manager is so important to your career. I've had some really great managers. I've had some mediocre managers. I've unfortunately had a couple of bad managers. And even beyond that too, like even if you have a good manager who is very well intentioned, sometimes if their incentives are not aligned with your career path, it can be detrimental to what you're trying to do. So for example, at one point I had a manager, I was a believe I was a senior staff engineer at that time. And I was reporting into a first line manager, and he had like a lot of his stuff was on fire. He was like trying to, put out these fires and really focus on the team. And meanwhile, I was supposed to be working on another larger project, but he kept trying to pull me into this other stuff, which wasn't really a good opportunity for career growth. And it wasn't really what my job description was supposed to be. It was actually kind of a lower level role that he was trying to put me into. And ultimately, I ended up having to leave that team. But kind of keeping an eye out for like, is your manager, are their incentives aligned with what's best for you going forward can be really important.
Joy, I have a quick question for you on that too. You mentioned that the projects they were trying to put you on wasn't going to put you in a position to further your career. I'm so curious, how did you recognize that when you saw it happening? And I'm really curious how you were able to get out of it. It sounds like somewhat gracefully.
A lot of it had to do with, so for my level at our company, most people reported into a higher level manager. So I was already a little bit attuned to like, am I reporting in the right spot? Additionally, he had inherited my entire project from someone else, and it was something I really believed in. It was, I guess it's actually a thing I'm working on now. It was involved with helping to split up our monolith and some of the pieces there, which is, a cross team cutting project. And he ended up like kind of trying to shut that down. And so I was upset about that anyway, which is part of how I learned to recognize that. In terms of like got out of that situation, I had already had a pretty good relationship, so I, sort of, so that they found another as well, so I shifted teams up.
Just to add to what Joy said, I think I totally agree with her. Managers do play a very important role in your career growth. And I think it is very, very important to have managers who can actually play to your strengths and not just have a set of defined expectations for you. For me, I think that has been an important factor in my career success, where I've had managers who were able to recognize what my strengths were, where I could be most effective, and then provide me those opportunities where I could actually gain visibility by putting those strengths to use. And I think that is essentially very, very important. And when it comes to, I think, a significant barrier in my career, I think when I moved from India to the US, one of the things that I faced was, of course, coming back to work after a break that did definitely set me back a little. And it was also about, learning about a new culture in a new country and essentially working through that. One of the great things that I found at Split is we do have teams that are geographically separated, and we make a conscious effort in order to understand that culture, right? Where is that person coming from? What is their culture? And how do we work through that and be able to bridge that cultural gap so we can actually operate as a team together?
I think that's great. And I want to ask you, Trish and Joy, where you're actually located right now.
We're in the beautiful Argentina, where a part of our engineering team is, and it's been amazing. The last 2-3 days we've been here this week, and we've had some amazing time with all our Argentinian teammates.
Can I ask a quick question? I'm really curious, Trish, you were talking about, learning this culture. Do you have a couple examples of specific ways to really bridge that cultural gap? I mean, especially being a leader where this inclusivity is by nature part of your role.
Yeah, I think part of it is trying to make that personal connection, right? I mean, what what is important to me or how I look at a certain thing may be very different from what somebody else who's had a different cultural background essentially is coming up, where it may be completely different for somebody like that. So I think one of the things that I end up doing is, when I talk to somebody who I know is from a different background from mine, I try to make that personal connection and try to know what somebody is comfortable with, or what they may want to share, or just kind of see how we can create that bridge. So neither of us is offended, and so we can have these productive conversations.
Yeah, and I think we've really been able to see, a lot of change within our organization. For many of us, we are fairly new to Split within the past year, maybe a couple of us, a couple of months even. But being able to bring those different perspectives into the conversation, and maybe different traditions from other organizations has been really great to see. But I think, this year at Split, we hired a senior manager of DEI to help us move our task force a little bit further and have true goals attached to the diversity, equity, inclusion goals that we're really pushing forward within our company, and how we can be present within our community. Trish, Joy, and Shannon and myself are all on this DEI council. We are working on several projects over this next year to try and, again, build that community and get to know each other, and create a safe space and environment for all of us, I think, to learn and grow in. And I think that's extremely important, as we're all really trying to figure this out. And when we're coming from this place of vulnerability and coming together to understand that we're trying to grow together and work with each other, it helps break down a lot of those barriers. It builds that trust and gives us that space to collaborate and learn with each other. And I very much appreciated being able to be a part of these conversations with you all and continue the work forward that we're doing. So I'm happy to, see even a conference like this, us being at WomenTech, for seeing the three, topics that you're all bringing to the community and sharing your experiences and tips and tricks with everyone. That's a big part of it too, is as women leaders in an industry that is highly male, I think the work that we're doing to share our skills, to share our knowledge, and to bring what do they say, like send the elevator back down to everyone else. It's a great thing when we can lift each other's voices and help our friends, our family, our community with the information and skills that we have. But all of you have kind of talked a little bit about mentorship and leadership and sponsorship. So I would really love to understand and get some advice to our audience about how you work with a mentor or a sponsor, or if you're looking for a mentor or sponsor, what's the process for you to work with those people in your community?
I think I can go for that. So I've always sought mentors, mainly because I like to learn from people who are more experienced than me. There are people who have basically gone down the same path as me, and probably, there are quite a few questions that I have that where I may be able to get, guidance and suggestions. It has been very, I think the biggest thing about reaching out to mentors is to feel comfortable to reach out to mentors. I think a lot of times we hesitate to reach out thinking that, we are actually taking some time away from them, or it's an effort, but in my experience, what I have found is whenever I've reached out to my mentors, they've been more than happy to help me out. And sometimes these conversations are not just unidirectional, right? It becomes bidirectional. You are bringing to the table some questions which they may have not thought about too, but just based on their experience, they're able to give you advice. And that has definitely helped me a lot. About sponsors, I kind of realized it, I think, in a little later in my career, of how important it is to have sponsors for your career growth. I think you need people who are able to bring visibility to the work that you do, are able to essentially give that kind of recognition. And it's important to, I think, build relations with the people who can essentially help you do that. And again, the basic tip would be, don't feel shy, go out, reach out to those people that you think can help you. More often than not, people are willing and more than happy to help you out.
I would just add a little bit to what Trish said there. It can be intimidating to be like, oh, I'm going to find this mentor that's going to be my mentor for the next year or something like that. In a lot of cases, I've had one-off mentoring sessions with people. So there would be somebody who's like really good in a particular area, or I really admire for something. So I'll just be like, hey, can I pick your brain about XYZ? And then like I go off and have a conversation with them. And that's been really helpful for me. So I would say, like, I mean, the long-term relationships are great. Don't completely write those off, but at the same time, like, even if that's intimidating, one-off conversations can also be super, super helpful. And the other thing is around the sponsorship side too. It can be pretty awkward to be like, hey, will you sponsor me? When like that's not generally done. So like, I would say even if you're not comfortable at that level, still building those relationships with your skip level or whoever it happens to be within your organization, people that you know like could have some say about what you're doing. And it doesn't have to be just you bragging to them. Some of it's just getting to know who they are and like making sure they know what you're working on, and like just kind of having interesting conversations to find out what their job is like or whatever it happens to be. And things like that can really help in small ways.
Yeah, I really agree on that, because there have been so many people that I've met in my life and in my career that we will catch up every 6 months or maybe even every year, but it's always great to hear what they're doing, what they're up to, and how we can continue to help each other. But we've kind of built that kind of like organic friendship to be able to kind of keep us bound together in those regards. But it's not a weekly one-on-one that I have with them to ask all these questions that I might have. That's what my manager's for, and I'm lucky to have a manager who really gives me that space to grow, the autonomy that I was really looking for to develop as a leader, to develop as a person in the business community as well. But on that mentorship aspect, I think Trish kind of talked about this of, when you're working with mentors and people that you're looking to learn from, know that they're also learning from you as well with the scenarios and the situations that you're bringing up. It's this really great mutual respect for between these individuals, you and yourself, or maybe it's within a group, but you're all there to learn and work with each other and to get advice, or to sometimes maybe just vent about a situation and have that moment where they can either be a great listener or offer advice for how to handle a situation. But when I was working with my mentor at my previous position, I always really tried to come in prepared with things that I wanted to talk about, things I wanted to cover, or questions that I had, so that I knew that I was being respectful of their time and of mine. You are, the master of your own ship. You're the captain of your own ship, right? So you have to put in the work to grow. And that means, doing the homework and putting together kind of that agenda with what you're hoping to learn in that session. Because while it's great to have just organic conversations, having some focus around that will really help drive the end goal that you're looking to have with working with a mentor.
I appreciate what you're saying. Oh, go ahead, Joy.
I just wanted to add one quick thing on top of that, which was that some of this applies to your manager too, in terms of asking for things. I think you were saying like come in with agenda, but like also knowing what you want and being able to express that to your manager or your sponsor or whoever it happens to be can be so important. That was one of the things I got out of being a manager, actually, is that a lot of my direct reports would come to me and be like, I want to grow, I want opportunities. And then an opportunity would come up, but I had no idea how to match it with which person. Versus if somebody said, I really want to get better at speaking, I want speaking opportunities, then when that speaking opportunity comes up, I'm going to think of that particular individual first. And so they're going to be the ones that are probably going to get that opportunity, even if all of my reports wanted to do more speaking. But because they were specific and not just generic about what they wanted, it was easier for me to match the opportunities I saw with the person. So asking and being specific can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I want to touch back too, and Trishal, like you have mentioned this earlier too, where it's a bi-directional conversation, and I want to put the emphasis on the importance of that. Even peer-to-peer mentorship can be really great. I'm seeing in the comments these connections, hey, reach out, and I just think that's such a great example of how to expand your network when you don't feel like maybe you have the right network at work. There's so many organic ways where you can start conversations, even if it starts as peer-to-peer and hey, we have this common understanding. They might know people that you're looking to that might have the expertise and questions you're looking to answer for yourself too. So I just love the resourcefulness, especially of these online connections, because now you're not just traveling to go have coffee with somebody and limiting it to your locale. You can now reach out to people across the world. And I love that, how you can now carry this idea of inclusivity beyond the place that you work into your global network, really. And it's become so much more accessible over the last few years.
I agree with you, Shannon. I think a little trivia. I think I essentially landed my job at Split through a cold connection request that I sent to my current manager. So I totally agree with you on the online connections we're able to make.
It's really opened up so many opportunities for us. I mean, look at us here. You're both in Argentina. I'm in Florida. Shannon's in California, and our attendees are all over the world, and we're able to connect with everybody at this moment. And it's a really great, experience to be able to have. But as we're kind of talking about being global and located everywhere, I would love to hear from all of your perspectives of how you maintain those connections with your teammates, in this very virtual and remote friendly working environment. What are some of the things that you do to stay connected and, continue to collaborate with others?
I think beyond the regular collaboration tools that we use, right? Obviously, at Split, we have our own collaboration tools to sync, to have async conversation as well as be on meetings. I think it is important to also build those connections with the people that you're working with. At the end of the day, we spend quite a bit of time in the day with these people, so it's always good to know. So beyond our work conversations, one of the things that we end up doing at Split is to have these informal virtual meetings where we just get together, have lunch, just talk about random topics, anything but work at that point, right? And that kind of gets you to know a little more about the people that you are working with. A number of my team members love playing online games. So every month we get together for a game night, and then we just pick some online game, just get together, and then spend an hour playing those games, and it's a lot of fun. And I think it's also important to know that we need to maintain a balance in having a number of meetings versus how much time we are giving to our makers to be able to get their work done. But as long as we are able to do that, I think it works effectively, keeping a balance between your work meetings, these informal meetings to make those connections, and just getting together to know each other.
I love that. And I think I might have to join in on one of these virtual game nights one night. I can't promise I'll be any good. So
we'll invite you for our next game night.
Everyone's going to be like, no, we don't know if we want her on our team. We'll bring down our top score, but
no, I think they'll love to have you there.
Yeah, that sounds really great. My old company, and I actually hope that I can bring this over to Split, but we've done some really really fun virtual escape rooms online, and it's really interesting to be able to do some of those because you really get to see how people think and how their kind of strategic thinking skills are. And some people really get into this idea of needing to escape this boat that we're all on together. But Joy or Shannon, do you have any other ways that you build connection with your virtual teams, or your even your friends and family that you are separated location wise from?
I can go. I think it comes in meeting people where they're at too. So for many of us, and it looks like in the chat that we've got representation from all of these different countries, which means also different time zones. And that can be such a hard part when we're trying to have a virtual dinner with coworkers to celebrate something. It's actually breakfast for some of us, lunch for some of us, and like really late at night. And so I think it's besides even just trying to have those times to all meet together, which are really nice, it's sending those casual messages in between. I have a sister that lives in Germany, and we have come up to this understanding of, hey, no matter what time of day, just text me if you're thinking about me or something that's funny. So I'll get a lot of photos of her cats in the middle of the night, and my phone's on silent, so I'm not waking up in the middle of the night. But it's so nice to have this morning where I come to messages from my sister. And I actually have extended that into working with my teammates of setting up a Slack message to deliver to them when they get to work, and really being present and listening to them, even when I'm on stand-ups of hearing somebody's sick or hearing about somebody's kid. It's really easy to hear those things and also follow up. I think personal connection means so much to people, and those little snippets can be really easy, sometimes really hard to remember. So I'm not going to put the burden on everybody to remember those things. But when you do, you can, I think, really create that inclusive culture that I think naturally invites diversity into your company too.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, when the pandemic hit and many companies went to a remote environments, and many companies, are trying to figure out how to return back to office. Inclusivity now also means how do we include our remote workers and continue to be remote friendly, remote inclusive, to make sure that our remote workers are a part of the possible in-office celebrations or things that are happening in the areas where there are many employees located. So it's a topic of conversation. I think everyone's still figuring this out. There's ebbs and flows of people coming to the office and staying home due to different outbreaks and things like that. But I think there's recognition that inclusivity also now is including whether or not you are, hybrid, remote, or an in-office employee. But that kind of takes me into some of the next questions that some of these have been submitted by our registrants. So thank you everyone for submitting these both ahead of time and in the comments in the chat right now. But love to understand from our panelists, the different obstacles that you've overcome in building diversity and culture. So not just at Split, but at your previous companies and organizations as well, and maybe even in your everyday life, the different obstacles that you've overcome, and maybe some tips of how we can drive change, building DEI in our culture. See, it's like we're at that four-way stop. I see us like looking at each other's eyes, like who's going first? Who's going first?
Yeah, I can go first. I think really keeping it top of mind, emphasizing the importance of it in relation to day-to-day work is really important. A lot of companies will say it's important and it's easy then not to have that connection between saying it's important to actually operate with this top of mind. And so I think it's just that small amount daily. Originally we had just a volunteer council at Split, but it was able to reflect and I think challenge like the company leadership to invest in a full-time role. And so now, to you had mentioned this, we have somebody in that full-time position that's able to hold it down. And I think we're lucky, and that might be more common, but I think ingraining that in the way that everybody works each day. Another thing, it's like we've also been really trying to look at the way that we build DEI into our operating process. And this might be done by somebody that's not just specifically in that role, but each team can think about it in terms of including in their OKRs, extending to like the leadership team discussions, like project intersections, like removing our non-diverse team or terms efforts that we've been doing. These are all the day-to-day things that, are even in the function of your job. Being a product manager, we have the unique ability to affect the product that we have as well. So besides just, your team inclusivity and diversity, a lot of us are in the position where you can affect what's actually in your product too, especially as you take a look at the product that you have to be inclusive of many different cultures and even different locales being across the globe. I think as many companies start in one country and expand to others, being cognizant that there's many different ways to think about a problem.
To add to what Shannon said, I think another challenge is essentially thinking about DEI as a strategy rather than just a checkbox that you want to maintain, right? One example is, people ask about things like, should we make a rule where, we interview X number of diverse candidates before making a decision on our hiring process? But generally, the research has shown that when you try to mandate this kind of a thing and use a stick approach versus a carrot approach, you can actually hurt the overall DEI effort and the perceptions. At Split, we take a different tactic. What we're doing is we're not really mandating these things, but we end up empowering our organizations through data. To just give an example, I think on the engineering organization, as we hire candidates, we regularly review our pipeline statistics. And as part of our manager check-ins, when we review these pipelines, we are not only looking at the overall pipeline health, but we are also looking at how are we trying to recognize the underrepresented categories in our hiring and see how we can improve that. So this way, by empowering the orgs with the data, we are allowing them to choose their own adventure. And then, of course, we have the DEI Council group, which is always available so that these organizations can partner with the DEI Council and get the guidance that they need.
One thing I wanted to add too is, so Shannon mentioned the volunteer DEI committee that we had originally, and I was actually one of the co-chairs for that, and essentially I was voluntold, like, oh, you've been complaining about DEI here, why don't you help start this committee? Which to be fair, it's something I care a lot about, and I don't know that I was excited to do it, but I was happy to do it. Like, it was something that I wanted to see happen. And I quickly found what is the case at most companies I've seen, where, leadership thinks they care about this and they think that they're doing well and they think they're on the right track, but they don't really fully understand the problem and they don't really fully internalize what some of the effort is needed to actually make change. And so one of the things we did early on was we conducted a very in-depth survey. It has kind of two parts. One is just a demographics section, and then the second one is much more about like inclusivity things. And part of the power of that is then we were able to look at those inclusivity questions by demographic. And I think that was really, really powerful for our leadership to see that, like, oh, it isn't actually the same across all of our demographics, and oh, there actually are some big gaps, and like these are some things we actually do need to be thinking about and working on. So that was really powerful for us as well.
And I think going back to, one of the things that Shannon said about, just including this as a part of our process, and then also, to what Joy said, where we do have people who actually want to make an impact in this area and want to be able to, get the time to do it. Some of the things we incorporate into our process at Split here is, as managers and leaders, as we plan for our quarter and as we plan for the capacity of our teams, we make sure that our team members who are interested in being part of these kind of efforts actually get the time and space to do it. So part of our capacity planning also includes, reserving that time. So people like Joy, who really want to make a difference in these efforts, are able to get that time and space in order to be able to do it.
Yeah, and I think the recognition of this all is really recognizing and understanding that change isn't going to happen in a day. And just the way we think of how we deliver code, it's progressive delivery, right? A little bit at a time, measure along the journey to see if you've made any impact, adapt and change as needed, because change takes quite a bit of time. And, it's about continuing to keep our efforts top of mind with our team, with our leaders, with our executive staff. I think we are all very lucky to have the support that we need to do the work that needs to be done, and find those allies within our organization to continue to do that work. But to really take it on yourself to just start small. Their small efforts really grow into big things, and it's that change and doing change for good is very contagious, in the good way. So you'll find that if you're making those small changes and you're introducing those changes to people, you might find more allies to continue to work with and to build different strategies, different tactics, and have a broader, to help you get to that broader end goal. But try and find people who will want to work with you on this, and really communicate those needs with your teammate and your manager, with your executive staff, and let them understand that this does need to be prioritized, both in the role that you do and then the role that the company plays in building that culture.
I want to also say, to add on to this, I enjoy, you're like, all right, you got voluntold for it too. I just want to plug that it's important if somebody feels like, hey, it's important to me, and also I have a lot of other priorities going on. It shouldn't always be on people in any oppressed class or any not like representation of diversity to be the ones to really carry it forward. I think, feel really empowered to push back if somebody's saying, hey, this is important to you and you're so and so on the team, you represent this part, so maybe you can be the one to kick it off. I think there's a lot of power to push back and say, hey, I've been carrying the ball by just being who I am and being present here. And that's what I want to continue to do. And I also hope that you hear my requests and you're able to take it on to the later org, because it shouldn't always be on, any one of us or any individual to move the ball forward. Really, you can talk about it in a way and have these conversations that, hey, this is important to the broader organization. I would love to contribute. I can't lead it. I think that's very an appropriate answer to have too. And it should actually tell you a lot by the responses that you get, how encouraged the people on your team or the surrounding individuals that you're working with react to that.
Well, thank you all for sharing your answers about DEI. I know we've only got a couple minutes left, so I want to start thinking about some of the last pieces of advice that you would want to share with the audience. So any final pieces of advice in terms of career, mentorship, background? We've talked a lot about building DEI within the roles that we play today. We've talked a lot about shifting and pivoting industries And we've had conversations about learning about ourselves in our own careers and figuring out what it is that we really love doing and how to incorporate more of that passion into the work that we do and the roles that we play. So I'll hand it off to Joy to get us started with some last pieces of advice for our audience members.
Yeah, so I would say one of the pieces of advice I'm going to use is probably one of the things that was most pivotal for me in my career, and that was when I realized that I should really play to my strengths. And so what I mean by that is, like, especially early career, you get, you know, your performance review, your feedback, and it's all this stuff. And like a lot of times it's easy to focus on what am I doing badly and how do I improve that? And of course you do need to get it to a base level. I'm not saying you don't, but at some point I realized that, you know, instead of, you know, getting better at speaking up in meetings all of the time, like, of course I need to do that a little bit, but like, maybe I could just start leveraging writing, which I really like doing, and try to make that my voice, or like trying to find other ways to lean on the things you're really good at and make that your strength and make those your superpowers, rather than just trying to always pull up your weaknesses and try to do that, and figure out how to turn your superpowers into things that actually fill the gaps of your weaknesses so that they're no longer even weaknesses. So kind of thinking about all of that stuff. When I got to that point, I feel like I was much better able to improve in my career and move forward and find ways, and also enjoy my job. Let's be honest, I got to spend more time on the things I love and less time on the things I hated. So I would really encourage everyone to think about what are your strengths and how can you make them really your superpowers and not just strengths.
Yeah, you know, and my advice is really in similar vein of, you have the things that you're good at and you have all these things that you might not know that much about. And I see in the comments there's some people that are even just like in college or before they have even started their career. And I think this idea is important even before. I look at it as a collaborative approach. So I'm a product manager, but I haven't been a software developer or a designer or these other things that I could be really good at, depending on where my background as a product manager has brought me. But when you come to work, you can also help and learn from these other people and lean on these other people that are really good at their scope of work to help fill in, make you a more well-rounded individual, or give you feedback in these different areas. You know, for example, if I'm working on a product spec and I don't know, and I'm designing maybe our public APIs and I'm maybe less technical, this is where I can maybe lean a little bit harder on my engineering manager or the engineers that I'm working with directly to give that feedback of, hey, this is the way we think it should work. And maybe ultimately I'm driving this decision, but inviting collaboration also naturally invites inclusivity into your culture too. So that's really part of the advice I would give.
I love it.
I think as a person in a people leadership role, whose role requires essentially a lot of decision making, it's important, I think, to come up with a purpose and essentially define your values and use this as a basis for coming up with a decision framework and allow this to essentially guide your decisions. I'm actually going to, plug in a little on my talk that will be upcoming in the upcoming conference around authentic leadership, which is basically based on the fact that, how you have a set of values and how do you let these values guide your decision-making process. I think it is most important to keep a growth mindset. We all stumble. You stumble, you get up, you learn, you adapt, and you move on. And you proactively deal with challenges, right? Don't be fearful of the challenges that will come at you. Deal with it. And most importantly, when you're doing all that, try to keep it human. Allow yourself to be vulnerable, and as a leader, let your people or your team see who you are without having to actually wear a work mask. I think that is, I think, very important.
Yeah, thank you, Trishula, for sharing that. I think that's so important about being authentic and really working through those challenges. I know that in my it feels like very long career now that I've made several mistakes along the journey. I've sent emails without subject lines to executives, plenty that I can list. And I think the big thing is to learn from those mistakes. It's just the way we think about experimentation, right? Is you win some, you learn some, but with those mistakes, you have every opportunity to learn and to grow from that, and to always ask for feedback. I know it's sometimes hard to get, maybe difficult feedback to hear, but that's an opportunity that you can take to learn from that, and focus on growing. So I know we are at time. I do want to thank everyone here in the audience for participating with us. I also want to plug in that Split is hiring. If you go to the split.io/careers website, we have lots of roles that we're hiring for in all different functions and organizations, such as customer success, marketing, engineering, product design. Please take a look at that. And I want to thank Shannon, Joy, and Trish for being so vulnerable and sharing your stories and experiences as leaders in the technology industry. And I want to thank my organization and for Women at Tech that you're allowing us to share our perspectives as women to help, build this community that we're here to help share the ideas and perspectives to create products, experiences, and services that really represent the diverse world we live in today. And I want to call out that there are attendees from over 30 countries here listening into this. And I just love how global this audience is. So to our audience, you heard from our panelists today about their different backgrounds and challenges and successes, and some advice that I hope you can take forward in your careers. And we hope that you've gained some inspiration, insight, and wisdom. And thank you for listening. And we look forward to seeing you in June at the conference for our 3 panelist conversations and topics. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you too. Thanks everybody for all the engagement. This has been great.
Yeah, so now we figure out who goes next with the stop. All right, and I know we're also sharing LinkedIn profiles in the comments and chats too, so be sure to pull up the different profiles and connect with the audience members, connect with the panelists, and we really appreciate everyone attending today.
All right, thank you.